Hi, babe. Welcome to the Horror Babe Show. I'm your host, Chelsea Bowler. Today's guest is Rene Rivas, who created the horror anthology short Rejected. Rejected contains three spoof segments with a wraparound segment advertising the digital camera. But things go horribly wrong. Enjoy this conversation with Renee, where we talk 90s commercials, 90s tech, and, well, the 90s. Let's tune in to my conversation with Renee. Hi, welcome to the Horror
Hello.
Babe Show. Today we have Rene Rivas on here, who directed, wrote, acted in, edited, did the VFX for your horror anthology short, Rejected. Rejected includes three advertisements for a digital camera in 1997. Two TV show hosts introduce and provide commentary on each segment. The first segment is two people taking digital pics at a museum, and one captures some kind of demonic spirit who possesses the computer. The second advertisement is three friends going to take pics in the woods, but they're too distracted by their new digital camera to notice the creature behind them. And the third involves two girls taking pictures on the town when one catches her husband cheating on her, so she goes home and performs a spell on his picture, and chaos ensues. This was so much fun to watch because I
Thank you.
loved, yes, you're welcome. I loved the way it was shot. I don't know if you actually shot on a 97 digital camera, but it like everything was like perfect down to the minute details of like what everyone was wearing and the set design and everything. Tell me about this entire experience.
So, in the late 90s, Sony released a string of cameras called the Sony Mavica, and it was a floppy disk based rudimentary digital camera. And I collect cameras, a bunch of film cameras and what have you, old
Nice.
camcorder cameras, and a local camera store up in Flagstaff, where I used to live, Flagstaff, Arizona. They made a Facebook post basically saying, "Hey, we're giving away three of these cameras, first come, first serve." So I get in my truck and I race down there. Long story short, when I get there, the owner's like, "Oh, you just missed them. Somebody just swooped them up." That
No.
that was a bummer, but also that's where the impetus of the whole idea of Rejected was. Like I was just kind of
Right.
I was kind of spitballing with the owner, like, "Oh man, too bad." But wouldn't it be funny if I did get one of these cameras and made a fake commercial about, like, I don't know, three friends that go into the wilderness to go on their biweekly photography excursion, and then they get intruded by Sasquatch.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, that's funny. You should pursue that." So I was like, you know what, Taylor, I'm going to write that. So the Sasquatch segment was the original script behind Rejected, and I eventually, thought that it'd just be fun to play in that world a little bit more. So we expanded it into three stories. And then after the three stories were all written into various drafts, we added the wraparound segments with the wacky co-hosts after the fact. So yeah, Rejected. It's a trip. It's a little different than a majority of the other short narratives that we've taken on prior. Our previous short films are relatively serious in tone. So
Okay.
Rejected just gave my team and I the opportunity to play around in a sandbox and really kind of poke fun at ourselves and kind of, make fun of the mass consumer mania of the late 90s and all the really wacky commercials that uh, kind of popular at the time. So it was just
Yeah.
a fun new challenge to dive into horror comedy, because this was the first time we had taken on comedy, and B, to fully embrace parody and really do something that just fully, you know, and just takes on parody to the nth degree. Well, that's the backstory on how Rejected came to be. It was
I
basically,
love it.
but yeah,
Yeah.
it's 2.5 years later, and now the film's finally complete and making its rounds, getting out there.
Yeah. So it where did it premiere? I don't remember if you said it premiered at Film Quest.
It did play at Film Quest. It played at Nightmares, and it played at some pretty solid film festivals that our team's really proud of.
Nice.
But it's still running the festival gamut as of now. It's probably got 6 months left of festival selections to hear back from.
Okay. Yeah.
But it is released for public consumption. We got picked up by the Blumhouse Eli Roth platform CryptTV.
Right. Yeah. Congrats on that.
Oh, thank you. That's been a big time goal of ours to one day have one of our films on a platform like CryptTV, and it feels good to be in great company.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's available now for public consumption. You can just go to YouTube and type Rejected and check it out. It's out there, but we still do have like 6 months worth of film festivals to hear back from.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I wish you luck on all of those.
Thank you.
I want to ask about the commentary of this film. You touched on it a little bit, but to me, it definitely felt like a commentary on like 90s tech boom, which we all know how that escalated to the radical technology we have today. Like that must have had some kind of influence on this piece.
Yeah, I mean, being a baby of the 80s and a child of the 90s, I grew up with all these wacky commercials, as I'm sure you did as well. And commercials in the late 90s were pretty zany. That was definitely a big inspiration behind Rejected. And just, well, Stay Tuned was a big inspiration. And, parody has been around for eons, for 50, 60 years at this point, if not longer. But we have never personally taken on parody. We did do Skinamarink Do Part 2, which was a short parody piece on the Skinamarink movie. But that was just like a really wacky weekend project that I shot entirely by myself. But Rejected was a full-on parody project with a full crew, full team. And we have personally never taken on parody before. So, and obviously we're tipping our hats to the likes of like the VHS franchise. We're really leaning into that visual aesthetic of the late 90s and analog, and, trying to package the film as good as we can to make it feel as authentic to the era as possible, pertaining to like the electronics, the wardrobe, the music. Yeah, that film was an obsession for about 2 years now, and I'm glad that it's complete. Super proud of Rejected, super proud of the team for coming together to help me on this wacky roller coaster to get that thing done, but I am glad that Rejected is complete.
I can only imagine the amount of work that went into that. Did you have a set designer, or did you kind of build any of that yourself, or what was that process?
So we didn't have a set designer. Pretty much our small team kind of all came together and contributed in some fashion, but I did a majority of the set designing.
Nice.
Like pertaining to props in segment 1, when the camera pushes into the computer screen and we get that practical computer world. That was a prop that I built over the span of about a week. Basically, I went to a local electronics surplus store and just grabbed a bunch of components and a hot glue gun and just put all these motherboards and capacitors together and built that prop. And we shot segment 1 in my home. Like we're here in my home office where we shot that computer room segment.
Yeah.
In Rejected, she would have been like right here.
Oh, that's funny.
So at the big, as we went into production, like I'm going to give you a little tour. That's the window. And I basically had to completely gut my entire office, take everything out and dress it like a set.
Oh my God.
And then for set design on segment 2, we were up on Mount Lemmon filming on some private properties, so there wasn't a lot of set design in that regard. Segment 3, we shot in downtown Tucson at a local winery, and then
Okay.
our secondary location was basically like an Airbnb location that we contacted.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
yeah, it's
So fun. And also, I have to mention, I loved in between segments how you had the digital camera like rotate on that little platform and they were like decorated like how horribly the last segment went. Like that first one's covered in like blood and shards of glass, and that must have been really fun to put together because I loved those.
I don't want to say that that was an afterthought, but that was definitely an idea and concept that I had on the back burner
Uh-huh.
way before production even started. And then segment 1, 2, and 3 were already in the can, like in post production. And I
Nice.
circled back around to Peter Furman, who's the DP, and basically was like, I've had this idea for a while, but I wanted to pitch it to you of, just shooting a couple gags of the camera with production design correlating to the context of the previous segment. And he's like, "Oh, I see what you're doing. That's cool."
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
and it kind of embellishes like the whole like cheesy advertisement aspect of it,
Mhm.
because that was a,
Totally.
a pretty popular visual language in the late '90s, was seeing the
Oh, yeah.
product, spinning. But I appreciate that you appreciate those two. Those were fun little gags to put together.
Yeah, absolutely. I swear the computer you used was like my family's computer growing up, because I think we did purchase a computer in '97. So I don't know what year that computer was, but I was like, "Oh my god, this is bringing me flashbacks to my first chunky computer."
Yeah, that was I'm pretty sure I had a desktop computer that was extremely similar to that one. It was an E-Machines computer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was the brand of it. And funny enough, the desktop computer and the laptop computer in segment 3, those were some of the
Uh-huh.
first props that I obtained for Rejected,
Oh,
like
fun.
when the script wasn't even done yet. So I held on to those props for like 2 years until we eventually, or a year and a half until we eventually went into
Nice.
production on them.
Yeah. Did you
But
just find them in like a I don't even know, like a thrift store? Like, where do you find those?
so I was scouring Craigslist in the electronics and free section for a couple
Mm,
months on end,
smart. Yeah.
and I ended up getting in contact with a professor that taught computer classes at the local community college, and he's like, "Oh, I have the perfect things for you." It was a working E-Machines computer with Windows 95 and a 1996 PowerBook, Apple PowerBook from
Mm.
1994, I think.
Mhm.
So the computers were both era appropriate, and
Nice.
thankfully they still work.
So, more about, I guess, the creative process. What horror films inspired this piece?
Um, well, we touched on it a little bit. I'm definitely a huge avid fan of the VHS franchise,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and would love the opportunity to have a chance to work with those guys, with that team one day as a segment director. Um, but that was definitely a big inspiration, direct inspiration. As mentioned, the film Stay Tuned with John Ritter from 1992. I highly recommend you check that out.
I will.
It's about a family that gets sucked into a television, an evil television, and they're stuck in all this like satirical parody programming, of the likes of like Kentucky Fried Movie, just parody, all the parody that we've seen in pop culture and the zeitgeist over the decades. It's
Mhm.
kind of all been percolating for years, and we've seen tons of fake commercials.
Yeah.
Um,
One of my favorite things to do on like Halloween or like around Halloween when I'm like having a party or friends over or whatever is playing old commercials from how like around Halloween, like from the 80s, 90s, whatever, because those are so stupid fun. They're so fun to watch. I love those. What horror directors, if any, inspired your work? I guess just along the lines of the VHS movies.
I mean, I feel like this is a blanket statement that kind of encompasses all of my sensibilities as a writer director, but John Carpenter is my all-time favorite director. I'm a huge sucker for Ari Aster, Jordan Peele, John Landis, anything from the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah, those are some of the heavy hitters.
I saw you've written, directed, and produced quite a number of horror shorts since 2015 when you started your independent production company. Do you have any advice that you would give to young filmmakers entering the genre?
Basically, the advice I have is if you want to make films, there's really no, in this day and age with the technology that we have at our disposal, there's no excuses to not make films. With the resources that we have on YouTube, spanning from Film Riot to D for Darius to even some of the older channels, Indie Mogul, I believe. There's just there's so many free resources at our disposal, and you don't necessarily need a big cinema camera to tell a compelling story. I mean, ultimately, story comes first. Story is the most important. Put all your eggs into that basket before you move forward on your productions. Write a terrific, engaging, engrossing, riveting story. Build a small team. Pull out your iPhone, storyboard, shot list, learn the rudiments of lighting,
Yes.
the rudiments of editing, and just dive into it. Because at the end of the day, I never went to film school. I've been completely self-taught. I've had a camera in my hands since I was like 12 years old. I'm going to be 40 next month, which is crazy to say. And I started learning the rudiments of editing when I was in high school, back when I was a breakdancer. I would make breakdance edits, cut over hip hop tracks. So that was kind of like the beginning of, yeah, so that was the beginning of editing. Where I'm going with this is, in this day and age, there's really no reason not to make films.
Yeah.
Like 103185 was a micro short horror film that we did in 2022. It was shot completely with this phone that I'm holding in my hand.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Having the right attitude, having the right intentions, just having the passion, just being passionate about what you're doing. And
yeah,
if you want to make films, go make a film. There's
go do it.
I know that that's kind of like, oh, easier said than done, and that pertains to every facet of filmmaking. But I would say for somebody that has made 0 films, has no set experience, has no technical experience, I would say start off by writing a 1-page script. Write within your means. Basically, don't write about astronauts blowing up on a space center. Write about something that takes place in a vehicle, that takes place in a parking lot, that takes place in a bathroom. Utilize resources that you have at your disposal, your own home. Write something that you can achieve with your friends on the weekend.
Yeah.
You will fail at first. You're going to fail over and over again. You're going to make something that you're not super stoked on, but then as you build your chops, you'll progress in your skill set.
Yeah.
Rinse, repeat.
I think that's great advice, honestly. So my last question is, what is your favorite horror film at the moment?
The Substance.
Yeah.
Hands down, The Substance. What she was able to accomplish with that script, and the themes that she's telling with that pertain to like being obsessed with beauty standards and just like the obsession of being perfect. It's just a knockout of a film, and that third act is just, it takes it up to 11.
Yes.
And I don't know, just that film just really knocked me off my socks.
Same.
I went and saw it in the theater twice. I
Did you?
Can't wait to pick up the 4K Blu-ray. It's just complete top shelf filmmaking, in my opinion, and I absolutely can't wait to see what she does next.
Yeah. Well, awesome, dude. Do you have anything to plug?
So now that, if I can take a couple minutes to tell you what's coming up next.
Please.
So now that Rejected is off the platter, we played around in that sandbox for a couple of years. We're going into production at the end of the month on a 3-minute investor proof of concept trailer for the feature film that's on deck.
Nice.
And I'm doing a feature film called Grunge, and it's about a rock band circa 1992 that they have a rising single in the charts, and essentially they get approached by a major label to get signed to the label, and the label wants to produce their first music video that's going to debut on the equivalent of MTV in this world.
Sure.
So it's a story about a rock band that has essentially a silver spoon handed to them, and then they fuck up, disaster ensues, and then they head down this path of continually making bad choice after bad choice. So it's like a Murphy's Law. It's a Murphy's Law story that is rooted in a very old school revenge narrative. So it's a revenge story. It is horror adjacent, but it's primarily a suspense thriller.
Okay.
And it's period, as mentioned. It takes place in 92.
Yeah.
But that's ultimately what I'm hoping to do next. I personally played in a rock band as a drummer, touring rock band in my 20s. So a lot of my experiences on the road, and there's a lot of me in the script, aside from all the carnage and blood and guts and all that. But that's what's next. It's a psychedelic horror thriller, because there's a heavy dose of LSD peppered on top of the narrative throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a wild one, and we're shooting the pitch trailer at the end of the month to try and garner some interest to get our budget going.
That's amazing. Oh my God. Well, I wish you the best of luck. That sounds truly incredible. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. It's exciting, and I literally, as mentioned earlier, I got back prior to this podcast like 5 minutes before we were about to start, because we were location scouting about an hour away.
Yeah.
And I'm here now. I'm present, and I'm chatting with you on the Horror Babe Show about films and such.
Yeah, dude. I'm crazy excited for you. Please keep me updated on all of that, because I want the updates. I want to stay in the know. And, when that finishes its circle around the sun, come back and be on the show with that one.
I would absolutely love that. And you'll be seeing the pitch trailer in the next month or so. That's going to be launching with the crowdfunding campaign.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you for dealing with me and my scratchy voice.
Well, it's always a blast talking shop. Thank you for having me on the show.
Of course, Rene. Well, that's it from me and Rene. Hope you enjoyed this week's Filmmaker Friday. Tune in every Friday for a new Filmmaker interview episode. Please don't forget to like, comment, follow, and subscribe. You can watch Rene Rivas's Rejected at the YouTube link below, and you can follow his social media handles below. Bye, babe.